Now that the 2024 NFL season is going to be over, it's time for a lot more of these videos to come out about how to fix so-and-so team, mock drafts, anything like that from my channel. So I've done a few of these videos already about how to fix blank team. So if you look at my channel history, you'll see possibly your favorite team already. But I've got about 25, 26 of these teams to go through, and it's time to get it started. So if you want to see your favorite team in one of my videos, just make sure you leave a comment what team. Make sure you like and subscribe. The 2024 season was very good for the Los Angeles Chargers. They were able to see what a winning team around their franchise quarterback Justin Herbert actually looked like, and they got a head coach that brought a humongous difference in mindset and ability to the table from what they've had at that position in years before. And they got a lot of contribution from rookies and young players in general that make them look like a team to look out for in the future. Starting with Justin Herbert and the rest of this offense, they really brought a more efficient squad to the table instead of one in years past where they would try to win with volume. Justin Herbert threw only 3 interceptions this year during the regular season, while contributing 25 touchdowns in total. The Chargers' additions of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in the running game gave the Chargers an attack that was very complementary to their passing game. In his second year, Quentin Johnston effectively removed the bust tag for at least a year with a solid campaign, and Ladd McConkey was one of the many young guys or rookies to lead the Chargers in the statistical category, as his 1,100-yard season paced the squad. McConkey and Johnston also combined for a stellar 15 touchdowns. The Chargers got an incredible year from their offensive line, and they were able to be relied upon for almost the entire season, as there were only 6 guys that logged major snaps during the season, meaning they were able to get a cohesiveness that helped the running game. Away from a statistical nature, I think we finally got to see Justin Herbert be a winner, and a lot of that should be attributed to the new coaching staff for the LA Chargers, led by Jim Harbaugh. The confidence that Jim Harbaugh has always been able to instill in his young quarterbacks, like Andrew Luck, Colin Kaepernick, and J.J. McCarthy before him, Justin Herbert threw the ball less than he has in his entire career, and I think that the result ended up being more of an addition by subtraction for himself and the production he was able to get out of the receivers. With how good the offense was, the defense was even better, and I would venture to say that they were much better. They led the league in scoring defense, and they were good against the pass as well as the run. The Chargers' main claim to fame this year was their conversion defense, as they were 5th in the league in limiting third down conversion percentage, and they were 1st in the league in terms of limiting opponent red zone touchdown percentage. Like the offense, the defense was led by young guys and rookies as well. The leading sack man for the Chargers was rookie Tuli Tuipulotu, and Deion Henley in his second season and first as a starter for the Chargers led the team in tackles. Rookie Tarib Steele, who was drafted in the 5th round of last year's draft, led the team with 4 interceptions as well. Now, the Chargers still had some vets defensively who were major to their success. Khalil Mack and Bud Dupree were solid players out at outside linebacker with the absence of a typical Joey Bosa year, and Elijah Molden was second on the team in interceptions, while Derwin James was one of the best players in the entire league, as per usual. All in all, it was a pretty good year from the Los Angeles Chargers. Offensively, they were very good. Defensively, they were even better. And their coaching staff had a major improvement as well. Led by Jim Harbaugh, head coach, offensive coordinator Greg Roman, and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, this team had a complete mindset shift, where it was essentially the same team from the year before, except you add a rookie at receiver, you add a couple guys at running back that improve your fortunes, and you hope to get some new production from guys you haven't relied on in the past. And they were able to get that. And that shows, like I said already, the improvement that they got from the coaching staff. Because I think if we look at this same exact team and we have the same head coach, the same D coordinator, the same O coordinator that they had last year, they're not doing this. They're not making the playoffs like they did this year. Now, going into this offseason, the free agent list for the Chargers does not put LA at a huge detriment, but there are some key names that are no longer tied to this team contractually. J.K. Dobbins, Josh Palmer, Morgan Fox, Poona Ford, Troy Dye, Denzel Perriman, Khalil Mack, Asante Samuel, and Elijah Molden highlight the list of players that could be playing for a different franchise next season. Khalil Mack is actually mulling retirement, so it might not even be up to the LA Chargers' decision to try to bring him back. If he retires, he's retiring. Asante Samuel, This was a really weird year with Asante Samuel, where he plays the first 4 games and then he goes down with a shoulder injury. Jim Harbaugh wouldn't really mention it in the media when it was immediately happening, and it was somewhat weird because now that Asante Samuel Jr. has come out about it, he's saying that this is something he's dealt with his entire career, even going back into college, I believe. So when you factor in the fact that he had that, he said it was happening during practice. The Chargers and Jim Harbaugh were saying it happened outside of practice. And then they put him on injured reserve for the entire year for something that he's saying he's had his entire career. So I don't really get what was going on. But they should bring him back. I mean, he was on pace to be a really good cornerback in the NFL until this year happened. And I would really hope that they could try to work something out with Asante Samuel, as well as other guys on this free agent list, like J.K. Dobbins at the right price. I'd love to bring him back. Josh Palmer at the right price. You'd love to bring him back. But when you look at that list, and you also look at the list of guys that the Chargers have on their roster at this given moment, especially tight end, I think this team could really use a tight end. But you compare the list of what they need compared to the list of players and those positions that they're losing. I mean, you lose Khalil Mack or Denzel Perriman or Josh Palmer or J.K. Dobbins. I'm not really losing sleep over it, especially if the decision is we just don't want to pay them as much as their market is getting them. I'm not losing sleep over that. Not as much as I guess I would with Asante Samuel. I just think they should bring him back and try to make it a good career with him in a Chargers jersey. So with that being said, let's fill out their roster of team needs with free agent and trade options around the league. So one of the positions I think they need to address is backup quarterback. They're losing both Taylor Heineke and Easton Stick to free agency. And, you know, I just don't think they need to bring back Easton Stick. And if Taylor Heineke is the best backup that they can get behind Justin Herbert, that's fine. He's a good backup quarterback. But while other teams are going to be interested in guys like Justin Fields or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, the Chargers should have their sights on Josh Dobbs to come in as their true number 2 quarterback. He has proved to be a solid option for teams in the past as a fill-in whenever he's been called upon. But like I said, if they don't get Dobbs, Taylor Heineke would probably be the next best move. I'm interested to see what they do with the running back position. J.K. Dobbins is coming off a career year, but he still did not play a full season. I think if Dobbins starts creeping into the $6 to $7 million range, that's a little bit too pricey, in my opinion, for a guy who has had way too many lower leg injuries to be able to be really relied upon fully. 3 guys I would look out for: Rico Dowdle, Trey Sermon, and Khalil Herbert. Those are 3 options that could come in and I think fill the void left behind by Dobbins, while also being inexpensive and still young enough to see if these guys could really take over in a short-term period until they find their guy of the future. At wide receiver, every team in the league is, every team that has the money to be able to make a play for T. Higgins, I think is going to be trying to get T. Higgins to come to their team, including the Cincinnati Bengals, which I think should be his destination, is to stay with Cincinnati. The problem for the Chargers is that I think he fits really perfectly, but he's going to cost about half of what they have in cap space. Unless they are able to cut Joey Bosa to free up around $20 million, which I think actually is more than likely going to happen, I just don't think it's the best move for them from a financial standpoint. A lower cost, equally impactful option could be Chris Godwin. He's coming off of his injury, and that could scare a lot of teams away. But if there is anyone I would bet on to come back from the injury he had and at least be 85% of what he was previously, it would be Chris Godwin. And it would be Chris Godwin with the LA Chargers. And I think 85% of Chris Godwin is still a lot better than a lot of other guys around the league, especially a lot of the other free agent receivers. Depth should be the next task for this group, as they are slated to lose Josh Palmer, and he was a pretty good wide receiver 3 or 4. Tyler Boyd or Darius Slayton are guys who, if the Chargers do decide to let Josh Palmer walk, I would be comfortable replacing him with either of those options. If the Chargers decided to be patient with a guy, I think Rondale Moore is still going to find a home next year. Even though he has not gotten off to a good start with his career in terms of being injured or just not having the right fit, I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in having Rondale Moore as a future high reward, low risk guy. And him with Ladd McConkey in the slot would give a lot of teams nightmares. Even though tight end, I think, is a sorely needed position to be addressed by this team, unfortunately, there are absolutely zero options at the tight end position I would feel comfortable giving anything more than a league minimum contract to in free agency. However, I feel even less comfortable going into the season with Will Dissly and McCallan Castles as the two options at the position. Young, cheap options through the trade market, like Luke Musgrave or Michael Mayer, would really intrigue me if I'm the Chargers, and I don't see why a 5th, 6th round pick, if that's what it would take to get either of those guys, would not equal the value that those two guys could bring. Now, for the offensive line, they really only had 6 guys play last year, and that was due to being a really healthy squad. They had Bradley Bozeman, Zion Johnson, Joe Alt, Trey Pipkins, Rashawn Slater, and Jamari Sallier as really the only guys that played major snaps last year. So the only guy that's not coming back, or I shouldn't say that, the only guy that's not contractually obligated to this team next year is Bradley Bozeman. And I think he would be the top option to just keep back at center instead of try to find somebody else. They do have 4 guys that I wouldn't be surprised if they end up on a different team before the start of next year. Rashawn Slater, Trey Pipkins, Zion Johnson, and Jamari Sallier are 4 guys who, again, played a lot last year and played well, but they don't have a contract going into 2026. 2026, LA is going to have a lot of money, but, I don't know if they decide to just move on from one of these guys for a more team-friendly contract player, or if they just decide to bring them all back with Joe Alt and just build this offensive line for years to come. That totally could be the option, and both of those options I think are equally as good. If they don't bring back Bradley Bozeman, they need a center. Drew Dahlman from Atlanta or Tristan Colon Castillo from Arizona would be pretty good options. Moving to the defense, there are going to be a lot of faces going different places next year with the D-line and their edge rushers. Khalil Mack, like I said, is a free agent and might retire. Joey Bosa, more than likely, is going to be cut. And Morgan Fox and Poona Ford are free agents. With that knowledge, the Chargers need to prioritize a youth movement to pair with Tuli Tuipulotu. Josh Sweat, Chase Young, Azeez Al-Shalari, and Joseph Asai are names that I think would fit that mold. On the interior of the D-line, Osa Odigizua, Taven Bryan, and Milton Williams are the same type of fit that I think would be great options on the interior inside of those names that I already just mentioned. At linebacker, the Chargers do have the guy of the future with Deion Henley, but I think if you pair Bobby Wagner with Deion Henley, it would remove some of the stress of calling the defense from Deion. I think that's a stressful spot to be put in year after year for a 23, 24-year-old. And again, this is going to be his second year starting at middle linebacker for this team next year. So if they get a guy to work with him, to kind of mold him into the guy for sure of the future, it would be Bobby Wagner. And they have Junior Colson behind them, who I think you'd get some of the same things that you add to Deion Henley's game. You get that with Junior Colson as well. So that would be my choice, but if the Chargers want to go with more of an athletic build, then Isaiah Simmons would be a perfect fit as well. Again, I want to emphasize this with the secondary. One objective should be bringing back Asante Samuel. I think you make this work with Asante Samuel Jr. Yes, Tareeb Still and Cam Hart provided great production at the cornerback position last year, but Samuel, like I said, was off to an incredible start for the Chargers. And they're also losing Elijah Molden, possibly. So I'm interested to see which route they decide to go with either Asante Samuel or Elijah Molden. Because I think if they sign Molden, that's kind of the sign that they're not going to bring back Asante Samuel. If they don't bring back either guy, they're going to need a high-priced corner free agent. Because if they're not going to have either of those guys that they're already losing, then they need they need more talent, and they just need more out of that position group. At safety, this is one of the positions I'm actually fine with the Chargers. If they do nothing, I'm okay. They should be adding depth, and unless they decide to go just complete rebuild on the defense and trade Derwin James, which I think is not an option at all, but if the right price comes, I'm sure they would consider it. Just depth behind Derwin James and Alohi Gilman, I think they'll be okay. For the NFL draft this year, the Chargers have 10 selections, including the number 22 pick in the first round. I could see literally anything happening with this pick, trading up to get someone like Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren or Will Campbell. They could stand pat and select somebody like Mike Green, Colston Loveland, Tyler Booker, Walter Knowlton, or Kenneth Durant. They even could trade back for someone like Siobhan Rebel, Jack Sawyer, Donovan Jackson, or Amarian Hampton. Either way, this is exactly the type of situation that you love to be in if you're an NFL team when it comes to draft time. The Chargers have the early draft capital to try to entice someone into giving them a top 10 pick, and they have the luxury of an already good team with a lot of money going to be spent in free agency to improve that team. They have the ability to trade back or stay where they currently are. And honestly, with every single selection, I wouldn't even think there would be much of a service to do a mock draft, because I think they're just going to take the best player available whenever they're selecting, excluding the quarterback, obviously, because they have their franchise guy. But if it ends up being a tight end, they'll take a tight end. If it's a running back, they'll take a running back. If it's someone on the D-line, they'll take that guy. Whoever they feel the best about is who they're going to get, and that's a great situation to be in, to actually be comfortable doing that. And the same can be said with the strategy for the 2025 season. All in all, for the Chargers, there are a variety of different ways that this can go with how they prioritize their positional needs. If they go with younger guys, if they go with more vet presence. Regardless, I think this team has the quarterback and the coaching staff that can make the front office feel comfortable doing whatever they want to do in terms of setting this team up for either the now or the future. And I think the coaching staff and the quarterback provide that confidence to the rest of this team to try to make anything work. And I think they have the ability to make anything work.